So what is it and why does it live inside a bottle? Let's talk about the new horror film, It Lives Inside. Hey everyone, it's David Stark from Watcher Pass, and I've got my cursed bottle and ready to talk about the new horror film It Lives Inside, which is coming to theaters on September 22nd, 2023 from Neon. It is a new horror film that has a strong Indian influence and a really nice slow building plot. My hot take is, look, I think you should rent it. It is a good horror movie. It has a nice slow build up. It has some good practical effects, and it's a nice kind of like Indian culture entry into the horror genre. I like how it kind of merge the two cultures. It deals with an Indian family that's living in America, so you get really good flavors of both. But there were a few things I didn't love as much about it, which I'll go into in my review. So overall, I think you should rent it. But I'm going to tell you a little about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then really quickly go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the ending section. If you don't want to know what happens in this movie, I would turn it off then. Before that, I'll keep it vague. I'll keep it spoiler free, and I'll let you know when I get to those spoilers. So in It Lives Inside, you have Sam, or Samidha, who is kind of trying to fit into high school. She is kind of rejecting her Indian culture and really just trying to kind of be like everyone else. It feels kind of like a standard coming of age style film, but there is a twist. Her childhood friend Tamira, who has been acting very strange since like the last year, suddenly has something terrible happen to her, and Sam has to kind of re-embrace her heritage and re-embrace her culture in order to try to help her and figure out what all is going on. So things I liked about this movie: the first, I like the really slow build-up. The film takes its time. It doesn't rush into anything. You have a nice time to get acquainted with the characters, with the culture, with some of the like conflicts that are happening between Sam and her parents and Sam and her friends, things like that. It really does take its time getting to the actual horror elements, which sometimes can be annoying, but this one I like. There was just enough kind of unsettling stuff that you kind of kept you on edge, but it didn't rush to get to any sort of big horror reveals. The second thing I loved is there are some good practical effects. Now, this is a very mixed bag. This film has good practical effects, not so good CG effects in some instances, but the practical effects are very good. There are some violent scenes that happen as Sam is trying to figure out what is happening to her best friend and also trying to kind of confront this weird entity that she keeps running into. And when those are happening, they're really good. There's also some kind of gross practical effects involved with like the cursed jar and things that they have to do to it, and I really like that as well. So look, I love practical effects in a horror movie, and this film, it has both, unfortunately, but it does a really good job with the practical side. The third thing I love, look, it has a relatively simple story, and that is not like being demeaning to it. I like that the film doesn't try to do too much. It kind of establishes the monster. It kind of establishes like what has to happen and just kind of builds towards that. It doesn't try to throw you for a loop. It doesn't try to do too much else. It doesn't try to do anything that like leaves you scratching your head. Really, the film kind of knows where it wants to go and leads you right there. So I really like that. I like how it had a nice slow build up and a fairly simple story. It feels like this film knew exactly what it wanted to do and kind of took its time getting there. And the last thing I love, look, I call it the culture clash. Like I mentioned, I love that this blends like Indian culture and Western culture. There's different languages spoken throughout, just as you would expect in a kind of blended family or a family that like came to America, and maybe the child speaks both languages fluently. It goes back and forth throughout. You get some, touches of Indian culture, Indian mythology, Indian food. Like there is a nice kind of mix of Indian aspects in this horror movie. I really love that. I love that it's really embracing both of those cultures to tell a good horror story. So that being said, things I didn't love as much. The first, and in my mind, always the most egregious, there are some really poor effects, especially at the start. There's this like fire scene at the start that doesn't look good. There's some additional scenes with like the monster, especially at the early startup of the monster, that just doesn't look very good. Like the film, it's such a mixed bag because it does a really good job with the practical effects. The CG just did not look that good to me. And like, especially your first kind of, I don't know, exposure to the monster, it just appears as like two pinpricks of light that, I mean, it does the job, but it just doesn't look that great. It doesn't look that sinister. It doesn't look that kind of scary. And it also looks like CG light in a black background. So again, mixed bag. I really love some parts of the effects. Some of the effects I didn't love. And the last thing I didn't love as much is the monster itself. I already mentioned the two pins of light. Doesn't look very intimidating. And then when you finally do get to see the monster, it is kind of a letdown. I will not go into it right here to spoil it, but the monster itself is kind of a letdown. And that's always a concern for me. That's always a kind of a sad aspect of a horror movie where you have all this really great buildup, and then when you finally get that big reveal, it doesn't really kind of do it for you. And the last thing I did not love, There is just some very convenient information in this movie, and you sometimes get that in a horror film, but this one, it felt like some convenient information came from two specific sources, and one of them was like very antagonistic to Sam up until she started giving her information, and the other just felt like magically able to find stuff. It's not bad. You kind of need that in a horror movie just to kind of like give some more backstory, but it did feel very convenient for them to have this information so readily available. So all that being said, It Lives Inside comes to theaters on September 22nd, 2023. Like I said, I think you should rent it, but if you do see it in theaters, this might be a fun one to see, especially if you get a nice crowd that kind of appreciates the two cultures mixing together. So if you go see it, let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. And I'm going to get into the ending right now. So if you don't want what happened to this movie, I would turn it off now because there will be spoilers. So like I said, this film centers around Sam trying to figure out what happened to her friend Tamira. Tamira, about a year ago, there was this Indian family that was killed in this strange fire. And ever since then, Tamira's been acting very weird. And Sam is kind of like grown apart from her, partly because she's trying to kind of embrace a Western style culture, and partly because Tamira started acting very weird. So it all comes to a head when Tamira is kind of like acting strangely. She's carrying around this jar, this like jar that's filled with this black substance, and it is like etched with Indian writing. It feels like it is enchanted or cursed. And at one point, for some reason, Sam knocks that jar away from her. I don't know. It was very strange because Sam didn't seem to be a jerk at that point, but she does this. She knocks this jar. It like breaks the jar open, and that is when all heck breaks loose. Not immediately, but after this, things start happening. First, Tamir disappears. Then Sam starts seeing and hearing these things, these voices. She starts having bad dreams. She starts seeing these pinprints of light, like something is there. And something starts killing people around Sam. So all very bad things. Now, eventually, through her own research, through some, talking to her mother, who finally tells her a little bit more about her culture, and Sam finally shows an interest in it. Unfortunately, it is to try to figure out what is this horrible demon monster that's killing her friends. But hey, look, she's showing interest. That's good, right? Progress. So she also asks one of her teachers to kind of help her research some of these things that she's seen. They go and visit the house of the Indian family that was killed, and they find a burned book in there that has all these strange, cryptic looking drawings. She shows one of those to her history teacher, and her history teacher apparently is a super sleuth. So she tracks down some more information about this thing. And what we find out is that in East Indian mythology, there is this demonic entity called a pashosh, which feeds on negative energy. And it's described as like a flesh eater or a devourer of souls. And what you have to do is you have to trap it in a vessel. So a vessel like this, or a vessel like the jar in the movie. Or we've also found out that sometimes swamis would take the pashosh into themselves. Like they would become the vessel. They would consume the pashosh, and then they would become the thing that's holding it in place. Probably very dangerous for them, but hey, you know what? They're magical, they're holy. Maybe they can handle it. Who knows? But when Sam broke the previous vessel that released this pashosh, which then took Tamara, who was the one that like sealed it there in the first place, and then starts to stalk Sam. The pashosh works by like trying to isolate the person. So it makes them like do weird things, see weird things, makes them afraid of themselves, and also apparently kills off their friends and family to isolate them. And eventually, when they are kind of fully isolated, fully overcome, then the pashosh will devour them. And what I loved is when her mom, maybe this is just like a cultural thing, her mom was like very worried about Samidha, very worried about like everything that was happening with her and why she was acting so strangely. And then when she says like, oh, I am worried about this demon that I let free, her mom's like, oh, okay, let's like figure out what to do. I guess maybe it's more common in her culture. Maybe it was more common where she was growing up, but I did love that like her mom was so worried about her, so like concerned. And then as soon as she's like, oh, I'm worried about this demon that was trapped in a jar that I let free, her mom's like, okay, let's figure this out. Let's do this together. So her mom says that you can't do this alone, that you have to face together, and they need to summon this dark spirit together. And in order to do that, they need to have an offering. So her mom and her just go on a cooking spree and make this table full of delicious Indian food. It looked amazing. I was very jealous. I wanted to be there to eat it. But unfortunately, it was all for this demon entity. I remember how I said that one of Sam's teachers helped her with some information also about this demonic entity. Well, unfortunately for that teacher, now she is a friend of Sam, and that means the pashosh is going to try to kill her. It already killed Sam's like kind of boyfriend. They were maybe a couple. It's not really clear. He was already killed. The teacher is in trouble. Thankfully, the teacher is able to hide in a locker while the Pashash is trying to attack it. And I guess maybe it doesn't have opposable thumbs because it can't get into the locker. But as this summoning spell happens, it seems like the Pashash might be pulled away. And the teacher's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to get out, which I didn't understand. You're safe in this locker. This thing is attacking you. You are fearful for your life. Just chill for a little bit. Stay there for an hour. See if this thing comes back. But no, like 2 minutes after, she leaves the locker, gets attacked, maybe is dead, you can't tell, but at that point the Pashash gets summoned by Sam and her mother, and it goes back to their house, which is a bad thing because Sam's dad comes home right at this moment. Sam's dad comes to the door. Both Sam and her mother are like afraid that this is the demon. Her dad comes to the door. Oh, it's okay. Nope, her dad gets attacked by the demon. You can't tell if he's dead. He's on the ground, he's bleeding out. And that is when Sam and her mother start chanting. And mother's strength here, good on the mother. Her husband just maybe got killed, but her first instinct is to trap this demon. So she starts chanting this chant, as does Sam, and they're eventually able to kind of like contain the demon. And after a little bit of chanting, the demon runs away. And you're like, okay, where'd it go? What happens next? Sam first checks on her dad, which is good. He's alive. They call 911, but then she asks her mom, like, where could it have gone? And her mom says it will have gone to where a death occurred. Sam remembers, maybe it's her boyfriend, maybe it's that house, but that house is bad. The house where the Indian family burned. She runs down there on her bike, gets down there, goes by herself. Her mother says, no, don't go by yourself. She says, I'm not alone. I'll be fine. Which you're like, that's a weird thing to say, but she goes anyways. She books it there. And when she gets there, wouldn't you know it, that's where Tamira was. Tamira was there. She's like trapped in this bathtub in the house. The demon was like keeping her there. I guess it had to wait a certain amount of time. Maybe it had to like drain her slowly before it was able to consume her. But it was getting ready to consume Tamira. This was the night, according to her mom, according to like the countdown of when Tamira disappeared, when she would be consumed. So Sam gets to this house. She goes inside, and that is when we finally see the demon. And it looks kind of like that monster in Shape of Water. It looks kind of like an imp from, I think, Diablo. I'll look it up for the picture. It just looks okay. It doesn't look that scary. It doesn't look that imposing. It looks a little bit off, but it's there. Sam runs through the house. She finds Tamira in a bathtub in like this basement. And it's good because Sam has been dreaming about this place. She's been dreaming about this bathtub. She's been like dreaming that she woke up there. Well, now she found Tamira there. So they are together. Yay, but there is a monster. So now the monster's down here, rises up to its full height. Again, like it is well done at least, but it does not look that scary. It doesn't look that intimidating. But Sam and Tamira start chanting this prayer, and unfortunately, it doesn't really work. Sam has this bottle, this vessel to trap the monster. They start chanting the prayer. The monster just like knocks the bottle over, knocks Sam out. She falls on the ground. Like, okay, well, that was kind of anticlimactic. Sam wakes up a little bit later. The monster's over Tamira, getting ready to consume her. And Sam starts saying the prayer again. Now, I don't know why it's different this time because it seems like it's the same prayer. But for some reason, the monster gets affected. It starts to like twitch a little bit. And then Sam and Tamira both say the spell. Now, unfortunately, Sam still has that bottle, that vessel bottle, but the monster breaks it. And you're like, what are you going to do now? Well, Sam has one last idea. She thinks of the vessel and continues to chant. And while she's doing this, the monster turns into ash. And then it like flows into Sam. Sam consumes the monster and she becomes the vessel, just like the Swamis did, just like she learned about. Now she is the vessel. She has a cursed monster trapped inside her. Not a good idea, but I guess that's the best idea they had at the moment. So does this work out for her? Well, maybe. We see what happens a year later. Everyone is gathered around for a celebration. The teacher's there, she survived. The dad is there, he survived. The mom is there, Tamira is there. There is this big feast, and there is a plate of like red meat just for Sam. And I'm pretty sure that the family is vegetarian, so it is a little odd that there's red meat, but Sam eats it to feed the monster, to feed the demon. Now, I forgot to mention earlier when Tamira was holding this vessel, She gathered like red meat. You couldn't tell what the red meat was from. It was just a chunk of red meat. Her backpack was like dripping blood, and she fed that into the vessel, I guess, to keep it like contained or to keep it sated so it wouldn't try to escape. Well, it looks like they're doing that again now. Sam is eating the red meat. Everyone is like watching Sam, wondering like what's going to happen. Sam starts eating it. Everyone looks really, really nervous. After she starts eating, I think everyone feels relieved, and then they start like partaking in the food, start feeling happier because Sam is feeding that monster, feeding that demon. She also, you can see she also has like a bunch of henna on her hand. I think it's like incantations to protect her, kind of like how that jar was etched with Indian writing. It seems like she has like henna on her body to like protect herself and like protect her as the vessel. So after this, Sam and Tamira leave. They embrace, and Tamira says like, I worry about you, and Sam says you don't have to. And Tamira says, what if it gets out again? Because Tamira is probably very scared of this because it almost killed her. And Sam says, no matter what happens, I will never let it out again. We won't let it. Tamira seems fine with that. She leaves, but after she leaves, Sam gets this like strange look on her face, like she's fighting something. And then a single tear like flows down her eye, and that's it. So I can't tell, like, is that like she's sad because she knows what she'll have to do if it tries to get out again? She'll have to like sacrifice herself, or is she sad because like she knows that the thing is going to get out and she can't contain it? I'm not 100% sure, but it's up to interpretation. That is It Lives Inside. It comes to theaters on September 22nd, 2023. So like I said, I think it's a rental. I liked a lot about it. But if you check it out, let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what I got right. Let me know what I got wrong. I'd love to hear it. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.